Good evening. This is the Elliott Wave Daily Update for the NASDAQ 100 and the S&P 500 for Tuesday, August the 13th, 2024. It was a difficult day to put an Elliott Wave count on what the market was doing or has done. But I gave it my best shot this afternoon to at least put some monitoring on what is going on in the market as it relates to the current wave count, which is that we're in a minute B wave inside of a minor fourth wave. Now, again, quick on the alternates there. The alternate remains the same in that there is a chance, there is a possibility. Now, I still don't like the way that this is coming in terms of, is it truly strong impulse? And it truly, in my mind, is not. But doesn't mean that it's not just going to continue to fly. Now, having said that, what I'm saying is, as an alternate, it did do ABC down. We did get inside the box. We did come down 38.2%. We retraced that. And that all fits to where we can say, not totally conclusively, because in terms of time, it doesn't fit, but it does in terms of structure, and that it did an ABC. And that would be that the minor four is over, and we're now beginning to lift higher in a minor fifth wave. Now, that is not my preferred. My preferred remains in that we're in a minor fourth, and we've only done A, and we're getting ready to complete the minute B wave, which then suggests that we're going to turn and come back down and take out that low. Now, you may wonder, how is that going to happen after today's strength, after today, just, the NASDAQ's up over 400, where they just come in and they start buying everything. Well, you're now continuing to put a bullish or bearish tone on what you're seeing happen in the futures market. And it may have nothing to do with somebody suddenly being bullish, or that the PPI number was, oh yeah, yay, rah, 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 rah. And that could be the narrative that gets tossed out. But honestly, no. In my mind, no. Yeah, that's what the PPI did not come out showing that we have massive and new inflation. It didn't necessarily show great, improvement, steady, sure. But then if you just watched the reaction from the market when that PPI number was put out, up and down, very muted in comparison to what we have seen in the past on that same data. Now, it came after, and where it came is when the Qs and the NQ broke above a volatility trigger. Now, what does that volatility trigger do? That we're going to start buying the VIX? No, we're selling the VIX. They start selling the VIX. It's a volatility trigger. It's where the volatility is going to start to increase in the implieds, right, underneath all of this. But we're selling the VIX, or let me put it another way, dispersion slash it's the dispersion trade and a correlation, dispersion slash correlation trade. And when that took over on that break in the volatility trigger, which again, in the NASDAQ happened overnight, the volatility trigger in the NASI, in the NQ, was actually at 18,709. Well, basically, by the time we opened, we were above that. So it happened overnight in Globex. Then it went back and it came above, and then it went back down, retested, went below, came back above it, and then we got the PPI number. So it broke the volatility trigger before we even started trading. So therefore, once trading got underway, we did see a sell. hit the market. And then it was just like somebody went click and it was buy, 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 buy. And we saw it and you could see it starts to begin and how it begins. You know, you start to see the move into Apple, you start to see the move into NVIDIA, we start to see the move into a lot of different stocks, and it bounces around a little bit, but when it catches hold, there's just no stopping. And if I take it down to the hourly chart, that it is an impulsive move. You know, it's just very defined. And actually, there was one notable pullback, and that was at 1 o'clock. And then after the bell. So how do we want to count this? How do we want to count that? Very difficult, even if I'm concluding it as a part of a C wave. In fact, I'm including it as a part of a third wave. And what was it? It was another diagonal on the hourly chart, but all you could count it out in between, diagonal, probably for wave one of this three. So it gets very, very difficult to pinpoint exactly what's what. Although the market continues to follow, not the cleanest Elliott, but it continues to follow via pattern. This together does not represent we're going to blast to the moon here. I do believe, because of how I'm counting it, that we continue to we still need additional upside before the B wave is done. And as I've already explained, before the alternate would become the preferred. Now, what's really changing how these markets are just reversing back and forth, risk on, risk off? It is due to the fact that just all trade has just really gotten very quick because of 2 weeks ago now, or at least a week, when we had that volatility explosion, where volatility can only be suppressed for so long, and it just exploded in everybody's face, and the market went nuts. We dropped. We gapped lower in Globex, and on Monday, a week ago, yesterday, right? So Monday, the market tanked, absolutely tanked. Volatility went for the roof. Well, then when we recovered off of that, this is it right here. When we recovered off of that, they just volatility started to contract again. They started to smack it. But were they really willing to go the extra and actually start putting that risk on trade? No, they didn't have any signal yet to do it. So we go through the motions, but that volatility, just explosion, puts a lot of different things into motion, i.e. gamma. When you're trading options, what happens to all of these different things when something moves? And that has an effect. And that has an effect. And then volatility has an effect. Because what we're going to see when those levels, when we're talking about these levels that like a volatility trigger, what triggered? It triggered the sign came that there was going to be an increase to the upside, because that level was likely resistance, and where there was enough gamma collected to when it broke, adjustments are made. So truly, it doesn't have like, oh, everybody's bullish now because of the Fed. That's still out there. Hands down, it still counts. But as far as today, it wasn't like suddenly everybody got bullish and just decided to come in after all of this stuff. It was a pure vol trade. And that's my feeling on this whole thing. Now, how do we count that? That's where the difficulty really kind of comes in, because Elliott really goes no matter what. But we're seeing, because of the severity of the swings, the severity of the breaks when they happen and they just kind of come for things, this was one. This was the last, we got a signal, and the volatility trade or dispersion trade kicks in, correlation. And we got up, but it was very countable. This actually is pretty countable because it's just one straight move. These were one straight strong move. It's these sideways with an upward tilt that it does kind of lean towards that it was a diagonal, sure. But then what was that? And then this again before we actually drove into the trade once the US market opened. So once again, what I try to present here is a combination of using all of the indicators that I can get as to how the market trades. When we're adding the options flow, the money flow, the gamma flows. Now, gamma is an indicator that tells us what happens when a certain level can be broken or in either direction. What happens to that gamma, whether it's positive or negative gamma? What happens to that trading position? And it's not because someone is turning bullish or bearish. It's suddenly you're just getting confronted with the market is dropping and you're getting massively long as it does so because of the position that you have on. Vice versa, if the market is going to breaking to the upside and you're short gamma to the upside, well, then as it continues to go up, you're getting shorter. So what do you have to do? You have to adjust. You must buy into it. When they put on the dispersion trade, the correlation trade, what they're doing is selling the VIX, taking the money and buying the underlying within the index, the underlying volatility. Well, how are you doing that? Well, you're buying premium. What are you doing? Usually calls and or selling puts. Now you're a dealer. What do you have to do? You've got to hedge, and so you buy the stock. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, to be honest with you. What happens? Well, the position they just put on wants the market to go up, wants the price of the stock or whatever the underlying is to go up. Sure enough, that's exactly what happens. And as it grows in stronger, well, it just keeps going. As more and more VIX gets sold and money gets put in. Eventually it does happen, it does stop because it builds up and we do another level and then the adjustments will come. So again, right now, the instability is because of the massive swings that we've had and what it has done in breaking much longer, right? If we just kind of take it out a little bit, this was crazy. And so what we did is dropped into red zones because it all got unwound. And it actually was all of it. So now, before we really start to build it up, so I think that they could be early and starting to rebuild this trade. But who am I? Because I think we go up in an ABC, we come back down, and it may be then we get a reverse, and we break points where you're going to have to sell into the weakness. And well, that's going to drive it further because don't forget, I'm looking for I'm looking for C wave down. I'll be the largest C wave down to complete that minor 4. So we're going back to this area, likely down below. Now, here's something else that everybody's going to climb on me. Again, I want to just tell you, I am a day trader. I have been a position trader and actually do have some positions, but they're not affected. They are, but they're not affecting me in terms of am I going to have to buy or sell or something against it. They're a much longer term position, and I know what the levels I have to have. Now, having said that, I can tell you, and I'll say it again, if you're a position trader or a portfolio trader, even if you're trading your own family portfolio, your own portfolio, it's tough to try to take my analysis and apply it to what you should do. And so you have to be very careful. I mean, I say, if we could break here, and then we have a chance of going, and particularly in the S&P. I've talked about that 5,000 level in the S&P, and I will again, but if that 5,000 level breaks, it should open a door because it's very, very strong support. Well, now some people may take that as like, now I'm saying it's going to go there. No, so no matter how many times I may say, I am not saying this is what is going to happen. I'm never going to say this is what's going to happen. I'm saying this is what the market kind of is showing. This is what the wave pattern is suggesting. But I am not and do not have a crystal ball where I can say, hey, market's going here. I've got, on good authority. Or, suddenly everybody's bullish. It's like, I don't see it that way. I really don't. Now, I understand when I'm talking sometimes, I'm saying the move itself is bullish. Why? Because it's going up. And is going up with some great strength. So yes, it's impulsive, and it's an impulse to the bullish side, to be honest with you. And there has to be follow through, and I believe that there will be. So that part, yes, but am I overall bullish on the market? On a little bit longer term, yes, because I do believe we come down, make a new low below what we just did, and then race back up to new all-time highs. So yeah, I guess I am more bullish. But right now we're in a correction. So I don't specifically say this is where it's going to go or that's where it's going to go. It's like we have indications of where the movement can come in. But what happens if we come in tomorrow and they broke this and they're all the way up towards 20,000? Well, I gave you the alternate. Now, again, we each take our own responsibility for what we trade and how we trade. So, I'll share with you today. In the NASDAQ, in the future, I was looking for, I'm going to bring this down, and then I'm going to get back to this, but I think it's really fair to the conversation and to how we're looking at all of this to include these things. That move right there today, I was expecting that I got this, and then it kind of came down a little bit more, and I expected it to kind of hold this moving average and then turn and go up. So I started to get long in the future. And there was just one trade. It happened. It took seconds, not minutes. It took seconds. And the market dropped, the NASDAQ dropped, I believe, $60. Boom, somebody had a big, huge basket to sell, and they just threw it out there, happened, bounced. But while it happened, it flipped, went down, took out a stop that I thought was well out of the way of reach, and produced a $4,800 loss on the trade. And that's me being honest to you as I traded today. So, what do? You just move on. Did I see it coming? No. Was I expecting it? No. Not like that. And what did the market do? Just went right back and bought it all back. So, again, these are the different things that can happen. Now, NASDAQ, 15-minute. I'm basically counting it as that we're in this wave C of the minute B wave. So a minuet wave C of minute wave B. We have resistance now. We have actually a couple levels. Let me go out to the hourly chart and go over this again. So in terms of the minuet wave C, our next level is 1.618 because one got just slaughtered today. So our next level is 1.618, and that's at 19,690. So basically almost 19,700. So what do we have before that? Well, this has been taken out. This is very close, and I believe it'll be touched and maybe give us another pullback. But because I've only gotten 3 up to this point, I would think it's just a small 4, and then we come back up in a 5, and we surpass that and get closer to that. So these two levels together, I think, present a resistance zone that may complete the minute B wave, and then we turn and we begin to drop. Now, what happens overnight? And many things. It could happen tomorrow where we're not quite there, and they don't like CPI. And they decide to have a bigger reaction to CPI, and they just start tearing it down. And then suddenly a lot of other things begin to happen, i.e. levels that can trigger adjusting in positions get crossed. They start to break down. And the more that break down, the can turn into a slaughter. And then we have volatility, then all the things start to kick in at the same time. Now, that's one way to trade, and you just react and put in what you need without looking at the level. It's all numbers, and you just trade. So again, when you're dealing with a portfolio, when you're dealing with a position, you also can just trade accordingly to the numbers in your position. If you're an options trader, you can see what your gamma is, your theta is, your delta is, the Vanna, the rho, all of those different signals that you're going to get as the market moves, interest rate wise, volatility wise, and gamma wise. So, and if you trade that way, you're going to make your corrections accordingly. You're going to reduce, add, change in a position to be more effective with what the market is doing. Otherwise, your position could just eat you alive. Now, again, what do I think for tomorrow here in the NASDAQ? Well, I think, look at that. That strength in that rally. This is the hourly. The hourly 200, just barely giving it a nod. Now, that's pretty incredible. When I take a look and just take a peek as to what that was, look at the volume. This went up 500, almost 500 points. I'm basically less volume than it does when it only has, when it goes up way less than that. The average volume in the NASDAQ future is closer to 700,000. We didn't even make it to 500,000, and that started from yesterday's Globex session to today. This, normally by now, you'd think under this kind of intense move, we'd be 2 million, 2.5 million in the S&P. And we weren't. Different stocks had different volumes, and some of them were pretty good. Look at the winner, NVIDIA. They're out there trading that like May wheat. Well, that, my friends, also is a major stock that gets caught up in the gamma play, in the dispersion trade. They're buying this vol in NVIDIA. They bought vol. You can just go up and down, you can see it. Meta bought volatility. Microsoft bought volatility. Tesla bought volatility. So it's happening. So overall, just in terms of trading the future, just in terms of trading the NASDAQ future, I do believe we have a little correction, maybe a 4, or the 3 isn't quite done yet. We may go up a little bit higher, put in that 3, come down on a 4, go back up on a 5, and let's see where we get in turns here. And we'll see what happens to the market. If they're not giving any indication that they have an intent to stop, then it's going to throw weight onto the fact that what I'm talking about in terms of that alternate count. And if you're running a short position and you've not made adjustments to it, well, or even put in a stop, I'm not sure what I can tell you. But I buy and sell during the day. I don't take like I'm bullish or I'm bearish. I just trade what's in front of me according to what the market's doing and what my signals are telling me. So, okay. Now, I'm going to take my breath and let's go over and take a look at the S&P. In the S&P today, it was actually pretty much the same in that we are doing basically the same thing. Here, I want to show you, or I'm just going to tell you right off the bat. You have to look over here. Okay? We're still just touching 5,400. We came back down. Now we're below it. Okay, all is safe. Then we come back up here, and this was 54.04. Then we break, and you can see what happened. So let me review what I was talking about in the trade room this morning. In the S&P, the volatility trigger was 53.75 in the S&P, in the ES, and 53.50 in the SPX. When that got overtaken, that then started to signal out risk on. But what put the cream in the crop, what just finished it off, was when it broke 5,400 and then broke 54.18 and then broke 54.25. So they were close together. And when that happened, then gamma flow started to kick in. And as the market moved higher, it forced the adjustment that they had to buy. So now, moving back to the chart, if you look at the levels, you can see when things kicked in and how they progressed and how it just kept hold all day long. So what I'm looking at here is that I got an A, a B, a C. That was the minute wave A. Then we have minuet wave A, minuet wave B. We're in a minuet wave C. We did break above resistance. Resistance again was at 54.04 or 5, I believe. And that was a trigger. And then 54.20, that was the second trigger. And so we are not too far away from, we got to high today was 54.61. It was a pretty strong day, you have to admit. And I was asked once, it's like, how many of these 1 to 2% moves in the S&P can we have? It's like, well, a lot. 1%, 1%, 1%, 2%, actually that one was. But that was overall like a 1% move today, over a 1% move. And it's like, that's not real common, but it's starting to be. All just to stick on to do a volatility or a vol-based trade. Now, what can we look for tomorrow? Once again, hourly, check it out. Now, I will show you something on the daily, which gave, just in terms of the market, a little bit of a boost. So we had this beautiful engulfing bar, and then we had two small bars, and both, higher, low, and then we move over to here, and then we just kind of explode. Now, that's not so super uncommon. If you're reading candles and you're looking at the pattern. Now, did I expect it that high? No, actually, I didn't. But when you can measure it out, you're going to see it can go actually a little bit higher. So just adding, and the same thing happened in the NASDAQ as well, just tossing that out. Now, here's the 15 minutes. I've got that 3 up there because look at that. This is really, really difficult to pinpoint and say, what is this? This a lot is overnight. So it's almost as like, gee, sometimes I wonder if it would be better to take out Globex sideways, right? More time than price, but can't. So I'm going to say 1, 2, and I'm going to put the 3 there. We got a little bit of a 4, I believe, coming, and then we will come down 4 and then come up in a 5. Once you get the 4, I can do a 1 to 4, and I'm telling you, this is likely going to come right into the picture to up to there. At least this window suddenly just, you can see how big it is, and it will come into play, in my view. All right. Now tomorrow, CPI. That's it. That's all we got. We'll see what it does. We'll see how hard they want to continue to build the dispersion correlation trade. Anyway, the next update will be on Wednesday, August the 14th.